Hi friends, welcome to EduTap. So today we are going to discuss some of the top MCQs which can be framed out of the topic accounting standard for revenue recognition. So now revenue recognition is a very important event for any business. Okay, every business works for earning revenue. So when should the revenue be recognized in the books of accounts? We need some rules, regulations, procedures with regard to it, and this is what the accounting standards they are going to tell us. So let's discuss more about this topic. So let's start our discussion with the first question. Which accounting standard is concerned with the basis of recognition of revenue in the profit and loss account of the enterprise? Now we are all aware that the statement of profit or loss or the profit or loss account, it is going to tell us about the revenue and the expenses, and ultimately it is going to tell us how much the profit or loss the entity has made during the year. Now a situation arises, a problem arises. How do we book this revenue in the statement of profit or loss? We are already aware about this concept of accrual basis of accounting. Okay, we have to apply this accrual basis of accounting in recognizing the revenue, but still there are multiple issues which are to be tackled about how the revenue should be recognized in the books of accounts. So there is a separate accounting standard for it, and we are being asked what is this accounting standard number. Okay, AS9, AS11, AS13, AS21, or none of the above. So friends, accounting standard 9, AS9, is the one which is concerned with the basis of recognition of revenue in the profit and loss account of the enterprise. So this is the accounting standard that we have to remember. Now, there are certain cases in which you may be confused about when you should be booking the revenue. For example, if I have sold, I am in the business of buying and selling of the mobile phones. Okay. So suppose a person comes to my shop on 29th March 2021. Okay. On 29th March 2021, this person is coming to my shop to buy a mobile phone, and I sell him this particular mobile phone. Okay, now this person has not yet made me payment for it. On 29th March 2021, I sold him the phone, but till 31st March 21, he has not made me the payment. The payment is made on 7th April 21. Now the problem arises, should I book the revenue in financial year 2021? Should I book the revenue for the financial year ended 31st March 21, or should I wait till I receive my payment? When should the revenue be booked? So there can be different sorts of confusions which can arise. So all these, they are tried to be answered by this accounting standard 9. It gives us the definition of revenue as well. It says revenue means gross inflow, whatever we are getting from the sale of goods. We may be getting cash upfront, we may not be getting cash upfront, but we may be getting cash after a period of time. So in this case, we would have receivables, or we may be getting something else in the selling of goods in the ordinary activities of the enterprise. So now it talks about the revenue which arises from these activities. So these are specifically dealt in this accounting standard. Revenue from the sale of goods. Suppose I am selling the mobile phone. When should I book the revenue? Revenue from the rendering of services. If I am rendering some services, I have opened a tuition center and I provide coaching to students. So when should I book the revenue? Suppose I am a doctor. Okay, when should I book the revenue? So in all these cases, it talks about how to book the revenue. And also there are some specific cases like the revenue arising on account of interest, dividend, and royalty income, how it should be booked, how it should be recognized. So this is also being specified here. So this is mainly concerned with the timing. This is mainly concerned with the timing of the recognition of revenue in the statement of profit and loss of an enterprise. So it talks about when you should be booking the revenue, whether you should book the revenue in one financial year or in the next financial year. There can be lots and lots of cases about it. Okay, suppose I have sold the AC. I have sold the AC to someone on 29th March. Now the person says, I will pay for the AC only when the installation is complete. I will verify everything and then only I will be paying for the AC. So in this particular case, if the installation is done after 31st March, then in that particular case, should I book the revenue in the financial year 2021, or should I wait till the installation is complete and the person verifies and okays the AC? So there are different sorts of confusions which may arise about the timing of the revenue recognition. So this accounting standard, it makes it very clear about when you should recognize the revenue in your books of accounts, in which financial year, in which period you should be booking the revenue in the books of accounts. So now we can clearly answer this question that accounting standard 9 is the one which is going to provide solution to all these problems. So answer is going to be option number A. Now let's move to the next question. As per AS9, revenue on account of sale of goods is recognized when? So let's talk about revenue on account of sale of goods. Options are: seller has transferred the ownership of goods to buyer for a price. Seller does not retain any effective control of ownership of the transferred goods. There is no significant uncertainty in the collection of the amount of consideration. All the above conditions are fulfilled, or any of the above conditions are fulfilled. So this question is asking about, suppose you have sold goods to someone. Okay, I am in the business of these mobile phones. I have sold this mobile phone to someone. When should I book the revenue? So what are the conditions that should be fulfilled? Either all of the conditions should be fulfilled, or if any of the condition is fulfilled, I can book the revenue. So this is what is being asked here. Now let's try to understand how the revenue is booked in case of the sale of goods. Now let's take an example. Suppose there is a shopkeeper Mr. जेठालाल. तो जेठालाल जी हमारे पास है और यहाँ पे इनका बिजनेस है. किस चीज का बिजनेस है? इनका बिजनेस है टीवी, फ्रिज, एलसीडी, मोबाइल फोन, ये बिजनेस रन कर रहे हैं. नाउ सपोज अ पर्सन कम्स टू हिम टू बाय मोबाइल फोन. नाउ अ पर्सन हु इज कमिंग टू हिम इज मिस्टर सोडी. ओके, तो मिस्टर सोडी जो है वो इनके पास आ रहे हैं मोबाइल फोन खरीदने. द मोबाइल फोन इज वर्थ ₹10,000. He comes to his shop, he okays the mobile phone, and now Mr. Jethalal is preparing a bill in the name of Mr. Sodi. Mr. Sodi tells him that you can collect the amount from me later in the night. I will give you the amount later in the night. Now, should Mr. Jethalal book the revenue in respect of the sale to Mr. Sodi or not? He has cut the bill. The mobile has been given to Mr. Sodi. The ownership has been transferred to Mr. Sodi, but only the amount is still pending to be received, and there is no risk with regard to the amount. It is very certain that Mr. Sodi is going to pay the amount in the evening. It is very certain about it. Okay, so now it can be easily said that Mr. Jethalal can book the revenue. Now only the revenue can be easily booked at the time of sale. Now suppose another sale is made by Mr. Jethalal. Now this sale is made to Mr. Iyer. Okay, the sale is made to Mr. Iyer, and again Mr. Iyer, he comes to the shop and he chooses a mobile phone worth ₹10,000. Okay, and Mr. Jethalal, he prepares bill in the name of Mr. Iyer, and Mr. Iyer tells him, I don't have the money with me as of now. Now Mr. Jethalal, he does not trust Mr. Iyer. He has no trust on Mr. Iyer. So Mr. Jethalal tells him, okay, अगर आपके पास मनी नहीं है, पैसा नहीं है, तो आप मोबाइल ले जाओ, बिल ले जाओ, बट अगर आप मुझे पैसा नहीं दोगे, if you do not pay me the amount till the evening, till the night, then I'm going to retake that mobile from you. I'm going to retake the possession from you in that particular case. If I do not get the amount from you, you are not going to get this mobile phone from me. So in this particular case, can the revenue be booked now? Mr. Jethalal has uncertainty about the collection of the amount from Mr. Iyer. So Mr. Jethalal puts this clause that if I do not get the money, I am going to retake the control of this particular mobile phone. So Mr. Jethalal in this particular case should only book the revenue when Mr. Iyer pays him the amount. Okay, so in this particular case, revenue should only be recognized when Mr. Jethalal gets the amount from Mr. Iyer. Now suppose there is a third case. In this case, the mobile phone is being sold to Mr. Sundar. तो ये मोबाइल फोन सुंदर भाई को बेचा जा रहा है. तो अब मोबाइल फोन का रेवेन्यू बुक किया जा सकता है या नहीं बुक किया जा सकता? जिनको नहीं पता, जो सुंदर लाल जी हैं, उनकी नेचर कुछ इस तरह की है. He never makes payment to Mr. Jethalal. Okay, he never makes any payment to Mr. Jethalal. So there is a significant uncertainty about the collection of the amount. The mobile phone is worth ₹10,000. There is a very significant amount of uncertainty about the collection of amount from Mr. Sundarlal. So this revenue should not be recognized until and unless Mr. Sundarlal, he pays each and every penny in cash. He makes the payment in cash to Jethalal, till then we should not book any revenue in this particular transaction. So there can be different sorts of transactions and there can be different rules with regard to booking of the revenue on these transactions. Broadly speaking, we have picked out 3 conditions or 3 rules which must be fulfilled to book any revenue. So Mr. Jethalal has to check Mr. Jethalal's accountant. Mr. Jethalal's accountant, you know his name? Mr. Jethalal's accountant is Mr. Nattu. Now this Mr. Nattu, he has to check 3 conditions. Okay. तो यहाँ पे कौन से 3 कंडीशंस चेक करेंगे? पहला चेक करेंगे ओनरशिप का. सो ही विल चेक कि ओनरशिप ट्रांसफर हो गई क्या, क्या बिल बन गया क्या. सेकेंड ही विल चेक कंट्रोल. कंट्रोल जेठालाल के पास है या फिर पार्टी को दे दिया. जेठालाल ने बोला कि पैसे नहीं मिले तो आई एम गोइंग टू रीटेक द कंट्रोल फ्रॉम यू. So in this particular case, the control remains with Jethaji, Jethalal. So now this control should also be checked before booking the revenue. If this control is not given to the customer, then the revenue should not be booked. Then is certainty with regard to the collection of the amount. There should be complete certainty that the amount should be collected from the customer. So if these conditions they are fulfilled, then we can book the revenue. So these are the 3 conditions which have been specified here. It says that revenue should be recognized when all the following conditions are fulfilled. So let's read about them. Seller has transferred the ownership of goods to buyer for a price, or all significant risk and reward of ownership have been transferred to buyer. Seller does not retain any effective control of ownership of the transferred goods. There is no significant uncertainty in the collection of the amount of the consideration. So these 3 conditions they are mentioned here. First one with regard to the ownership, and the risk and rewards they only flow with the ownership. So this is mainly about the ownership. Second one is about the control, and the third one is regard to the collection. No certainty, no uncertainty in collection of the amount. So these conditions they must always be fulfilled. Just think about when you are going to a mall, when you are going to a big departmental store, you pick out your cart, you pick out your trolley, and you are picking stuff in your cart. So when you have put the stuff in your cart, can the accountant of the store book its revenue whenever you put the stuff in your cart? No, it's not possible. So after the bill is prepared, after the ownership is transferred to you, after the amount is received from you, then only the revenue is recognized. After you have put the item in your cart, and suppose you pick out your wallet and you find out I have not got any money with me, so you put back all the items from where you picked them. So in this particular case, no revenue can be booked. So all these conditions they have to be satisfied, they have to be fulfilled with regard to recognition of revenue from the sale of goods. So now we can easily answer this question that revenue is going to be recognized when all of the conditions are fulfilled. So answer is option number D. Now let's move to service transactions. As per AS9, revenue from service transactions is recognized as the service is performed by which of the following methods? Proportionate completion method, completed service method, either A or B, residual completion method, or none of the above. So we have already understood about how the revenue should be booked in the case of sale of goods. Now what about the revenue recognition in the case of service transactions? So it says that revenue should be recognized when the service is performed as the service is performed by which of the following methods? So which method can be followed with regard to it? So this is what is being asked here. So friends, Accounting Standard 9, in respect of revenue from service transaction, it talks about 2 methods which can be followed. Okay, the first one is proportionate completion method. Now suppose I am being hired by an institute to take classes on accounting at 3 separate locations. Okay, I have to take a full day long class. Okay, I have to take suppose a 5-hour long class on accounting at 3 different locations, at Delhi, at Mumbai, and at Bangalore. Okay, all the 3 classes they are going to be equally long. I am going to teach the same thing in all of these classes, and I am going to be paid. Suppose I am going to be paid how much I should get paid for this particular stuff. Okay, I have to make an assumption only, so let's make a big one. I am being paid 1,50,000 for this particular assignment. Okay, so 1,50,000 I am going to be paid. Now, can I proportionate this 1,50,000 amount on these 3 particular lectures that I am going to taking? be taking? Yes, I can definitely do it. I'm going to do the same stuff in each of these lectures. The first lecture I'm going to take on, suppose let's assume the first lecture I'm going to take on 15th March. The second lecture I am going to take on 31st March, and the last lecture I am going to take on 10th of April. So in this particular case, I am going to be paid 1,50,000 for this entire booking that has been done. So in this particular case, how much revenue should I book for the year ended 31st March? Should I book entire 1,50,000, or should I book only proportionate revenue for these two classes, or should I book the entire revenue in the next financial year? So what should be done? Just think about it logically and just make a guess about how should I book the revenue. So this method, it talks about revenue is recognized proportionately based on the performance of each of the acts. So now after I perform the Delhi and Mumbai act, after I complete the lectures in Delhi and Mumbai, I can book the revenue for Delhi and Mumbai. I can book the proportionate revenue, that is 1 lakh for Delhi and Mumbai in my books of accounts. I've still not done the Bangalore class, so I cannot book the revenue for the Bangalore class, but I can definitely book my revenue for the Delhi and Mumbai because I've already taken the classes and now this amount is payable to me. I've completed my part on it. I have executed my act with regard to this particular performance. So in this case, the proportionate revenue should be booked for the year ended 31st March. So proportionate completion method is going to be adopted when the performance includes execution of more than one act. So here I am performing 3 acts, okay, and I am going to book the revenue proportionately after I perform each of these acts. So this is what is being specified in this particular method. Now let's talk about the second method which has been specified in AS9 for booking revenue from service transactions. Now this method is completed service contract method. So the name itself makes it clear that after you complete the service, then only you should be booking the revenue. No proportionate booking should be done. So this method is going to be followed when you are only going to do a single act. Okay, suppose I have to take only one class in Bangalore on 10th of April and I am going to get rupees 50,000 for it. And for taking this class, I got a call on 29th March. Now on 31st March, I am preparing my financial statements. Should I book this particular revenue? No, I should not book this particular revenue because there is only a single act which is to be done and this single act is not yet complete on my part. So after I complete this act on 10th of April, then only I should book the revenue. Now it also says, however, there can be cases where more than single act is performed to provide a service and the service yet to be performed in the transaction are so significant as a whole that performance cannot be considered as completed unless those acts are executed. Now suppose what happens is, I get a call on 29th March. Okay, I got a call on 29th March. Now they tell me, okay, that you are going to be paid rupees 50,000 for taking a class. Okay, this class is to be taken on 10th of April in Bangalore. Plus they also tell me that by 31st March, you have to prepare a 100-page study material which is to be distributed to the students. I have to prepare a 100-page study material which is to be distributed by the students. So in this particular case, I complete this study material on 31st of March and I mail it to them, this particular study material. Now I have completed some part of this particular transaction. Okay, of this particular service, I have completed some of the part. But the part which is not yet completed is so significant, it is so huge that my performance cannot be considered as a complete unless I take this class in Bangalore. So this part is so huge that I cannot recognize my revenue on the basis of this small part, this 100-page study material. I cannot book my revenue on the basis of this part only. I can only book my revenue once the significant part is complete, once my whole of the performance is complete. So I can only book the revenue after 10th of April when I take the class. So in all such cases, completed service contract method is quite appropriate. So we talked about two methods, proportionate completion and completed service contract method, and I explained to you how these methods they can be applied. So now the answer to this particular question, okay, the answer to this particular question is going to be option number C, because either proportionate completion method where you have to perform more than one equal acts, you can book the revenue proportionately. And you can follow the completed service contract method, where you have to either do one act or you have to do acts in such a manner that a substantial part is going to be completed at a later date only. So then you should book the revenue when the entire service is completed. Answer is option C. So I hope the first three questions, they are clear to you guys. Moving on to the next question. As per AS9, revenue in respect of interest income should be recognized. So now suppose I have given a loan. Okay, I have given a loan of rupees 10 lakh and I have to get an interest of 10% every year on this particular loan. I have given this loan to a company and this company is going to pay me 10% interest on this loan every year. Now I gave the loan on 1st April 2020. On 31st March 2021, I have to close my books of accounts. I have to prepare my financial statements. Now I have given this loan on 1st of April. I have still not received the interest in cash. The interest in cash, it was received on 2nd April 2021. So a problem arises in this particular case as well. Whether should I book this revenue in my financial statements, in my statement of profit or loss for the year ended 31st March 2021, or should I book this revenue in the next year? So this is what is being asked in this particular question. So it says in respect of interest income, revenue should be recognized. Options are on time proportion basis, as desired by the recipient of the income, as directed by the person making payment, when company records interest expense in its books of accounts, or none of the above. So how should I recognize my interest income? So this accounting standard 9, it talks about three special cases: interest, royalty and dividend. Now it says that interest income should be booked on time proportion basis after taking into account applicable interest and amount outstanding. So in this particular case, I was already aware of the principle. I had given the loan of 10 lakh at 10%. So 1 lakh is the interest that I have to receive for the financial year. I can easily compute it that for the full year that my interest is going to be 1 lakh. So I can book this revenue in my financial year ended 31st March 21. So I can easily book this particular revenue on time proportion basis. So suppose if I had given the loan in the middle of the year, so in that particular case on time proportion basis, I could only book half of the interest as due on 31st March 2021 as my income for the financial year. So this time proportion basis you have to follow in this particular case. So time which has elapsed, you have to consider it along with the principal amount, along with the rate of interest, and you can easily compute your interest income. Then is royalty. Now royalty is received for the use of intangible assets. Suppose I have some patent, I have some copyright, I have some know-how, or I have some trademark, and I give it to someone else to use it to generate revenue. And now for this usage, I am being paid royalty. I am being paid royalty at suppose different intervals of the time as per my terms of the contract in which I have entered into with the other person. So I had this patent, I gave it to someone else and he agreed to pay me this much amount as per the terms of the contract. So it says that revenue should be recognized following the accrual basis of accounting in accordance with the relevant agreement. So in accordance with the agreement you have made, whenever the revenue is due, you should book that revenue in the books of accounts, whether or not you have received cash for it. You can book it on accrual basis of accounting. Then is dividend income. Now, when you are investing money in the shares of a company, you receive dividend for that investment. Now, the dividend income, it should be recognized only when the right to receive dividend is established. Okay, when the right to receive dividend is established. For example, you found that the company is generating enough profits. It is very much possible that it is going to give you a huge amount of dividend. Can you book the dividend now? No, you cannot book it unless the right to receive arises. So when the company officially declares that this much amount of dividend I am going to pay, the directors, they decide that this much dividend amount is going to be paid, then only your right to receive dividend is established and then only you can book this particular revenue. So you cannot just book this revenue on the basis of profits in the company. You have to make sure that the dividend is actually declared by the company to book it in your books of accounts. So now we can easily answer this question that the interest income should be recognized on time proportion basis. So clearly the answer is going to be option number A. Now moving on to the last question. Revenue in respect of which of the following sales should be recognized only when the goods are sold to the third party? Sale on approval, guaranteed sales, warranty sales, consignment sales, installment sales. So in which particular case you are going to book the revenue when the goods they are sold to third party. Just think about it logically. Just think about the meaning of these particular terms, and on the basis of it you can easily make out the right answer. So now let's talk about these special cases. So first is sale on approval. Okay, in the sale on approval, what happens is there is a seller and there is a buyer, and the seller is selling goods to buyer on sale on approval basis. So in this particular case, the buyer has to give his approval whether he is accepting the goods or whether he is not accepting the goods. So once the seller gets the approval from the buyer that he has accepted the goods, then only the revenue can be booked. Or if the approval is not received, buyer does something which signifies his approval. The buyer sells these goods to someone else. The buyer uses it for a reasonable period of time. So in that particular case also you can book the revenue. So mainly you have to get the approval to book the revenue in the sale on approval basis. Then is guaranteed sales. Now this guaranteed sales is a very different concept. It means that the delivery is made giving the buyer an ultimate right, unlimited right of return. So the buyer can return the goods at any point of time. If he is not satisfied with it, he can return the goods at any point of time. So whether in that particular case you can book any revenue or not. If you are making all the sales like this, then you are never going to book a revenue. If you are giving the buyer an unlimited right of return, how can you ever book the revenue in this particular case? So now this accounting standard says that you can recognize the revenue on appropriate basis, but you have to make suitable provisions also. Suppose you sell 100 phones with this right of return, and on an average you find out that 5 phones out of 100 they are returned. So you can book the revenue for 100 phones, but you should make the revenue, you should make a provision in respect of the 5 phones, that 5 phones may be returned in the future. So you should make a provision for this return in your books of accounts. Then is consignment sales. Consignment sales, it means that there is a consigner and there is a consignee. Suppose I am a person, okay, I am a person who wants to sell the goods. Now I am not selling the goods myself to each and every customer of mine. I appoint a consignee, okay. I am the consigner and I appoint a consignee who is going to sell the goods on behalf of me to some other persons. I have given the goods to the consignee to make a sale. I have given him 10 mobile phones to make a sale. Can I book the sale now? Can I book my revenue now? No, I cannot book it. If the consignee sells it to some third party, to some customer, then only I can book my revenue. So in this particular case, you are going to book the revenue. You are going to book the revenue only when the goods are sold to the party. So now there also can be some other special cases about revenue recognition. So in one case where the installation and inspection is an essential part of the sale. So like in the AC example we took. So now the buyer told me that after the AC is installed at my place and I inspect it and I okay it, then only I am going to make the payment. So I should recognize the revenue only after the inspection and installation is completed. What about cash on delivery? So the accounting standard says for cash on delivery sales, you should recognize the revenue only when the cash is received by you. You get the cash or you send someone else on your behalf to collect the cash. He receives the cash, then only you can book the revenue. What about installment sales? What about installment sales? So sometimes what happens, the consideration is received in installments. A person comes to me, okay, a person comes to me and he says that he wants to buy a mobile phone for me. The price of the mobile phone is rupees 10,000. He says, I am not going to pay this amount altogether now. I am going to pay it in installments only. Okay. So I tell him that you can pay me rupees 1,000 per month for 12 months. So I tell him this thing. You have to pay me rupees 1,000 per month for 12 months. So in this particular case, I am going to ultimately collect from him rupees 12,000. So for rupees 10,000 consideration, I am going to collect rupees 12,000. Now the difference rupees 2,000, it is nothing but the interest for the delayed payment that I am collecting from him. So the accounting standard says that you can book the revenue attributable to the sales price exclusive of the interest at the day of the sale. So out of the sale price, out of rupees 12,000, you have to reduce the interest component. That is 2,000 you have to reduce. Rupees 10,000 is something which you can book the revenue on the date of the sale. And this interest element, it should be recognized as revenue on proportionate basis according to the unpaid balance which is due to the seller. So interest is to be booked on time proportionate basis. time proportionate basis, and the actual consideration amount, I can book it at the date of the sale. So now I can easily answer this question that revenue in respect of the consignment sales is recognized only when the goods are sold to a third party. So there is a consignor, consignee, and when the goods are sold by the consignee to a third party, then only the consignor can actually recognize the revenue. So answer is option number D. So thank you friends. This was all about our discussion on a very important standard pertaining to revenue recognition. So I believe you were able to understand the key concepts involved in this accounting standard. So that's it for today. Thank you. Bye bye. Take care and all the best.